Right then, how's it going? It's me, Shotty for HF. I hope everyone's good. And I just thought I'd do this video to share with you mainly my experience of using the Yamaha HS7s, which I've been using for quite a while now. They started off as a secondary pair of monitors, and then the other monitors that I had developed a fault, and I was actually left using only the HS7s for quite a while, a few years in fact. I've been producing and mixing mainly on the HS7s, and I did have a complimentary sub to go along with that, which definitely helps with these speakers to be able to listen to the low end and know what's going on down there. What I'll do is just to sort of tell you a little bit of background as to sort of how I sort of built up to using the HS7s. I mean, when I started making music properly, what I mean by properly is I was doing it consistently and actually producing music to listen to and, you know, sort of put out, sort of, so to speak. And when I started doing that, I was mainly using headphones in a one-bedroom flat in Birmingham. And that was okay for a time, and they weren't, you know, particular studio headphones or anything like that. After that, yeah, I had another setup in the front room of a house in Birmingham where I'd started to make use of speakers. I could have things a little bit louder because I wasn't in the flat anymore. And then eventually I ended up moving back from Birmingham into Leicestershire, and then I was making music in a bedroom for quite some time, and in that space I literally just had speakers all over the place. There was no like particular positioning or anything like that. I just had all these different, I started collecting speakers and using different speakers, Jamos, that kind of thing. And yeah, it wasn't a great setup. That's when I really started to experiment with different speakers, and most of the time then when I was making music and, you know, in the flat, I was only really using like MIDI sequencers and CD writers to be able to make and record music. And then it was shortly after that I got my first PC and I started to use software to make music. But I say I had all these speakers all over the place. It was just the obvious routine of making tracks and then going into another room and putting them on like a stereo system, like a hi-fi system or whatever, listening to the track. And then obviously back then, I'm talking, this was 2004, 2005 and around that time. And then obviously I'd listen to it on the hi-fi and wonder why it sounded crap. But then I'd go back and fix issues, and I just worked like that for quite a while. And on that system and in that setup, it was in 2006 when one of my electronic albums featured on the One Music Show on BBC Radio 1 with Hugh Stevens, and also Vic Galloway was playing a few tracks as well.
The track is Waking Up by Shotty, who is Michael Scott from Leicester. I played that on the show last week. Good stuff it is too. myspace.com/Shotty303 if you want to get in touch with him. Loads of text to read out.
After party in 1956. Shotty on Radio 1. One Michael Scott from Leicestershire. Played a track of his on last week's show as well, from a sort of demo album he's put together called Logic in Motion. Very, very good as well.
And they played a number of tracks from that CD album for like consecutive weeks. They just carried on playing it and then started playing different tracks off it. It was really good, you know, different tracks off the same album. So I kind of told myself I must be doing something right, even though I didn't have the best setup. And then when I came into this room that I'm in now, I was still using passive speakers and amps, and I was working like that for a while, and it was very boomy, and then I did do some sort of acoustic treatment in here. My first proper set of studio monitors was some KRK Rocket 8s, so 8-inch studio monitors, and I put them on speaker brackets that were attached to the wall. You know what, going to them from all the other speakers that I'd had before that, it sounded amazing. It sounded incredible. The detail was amazing. I didn't really know at the time that I was way too close to those speakers. And you know, not to sort of go into the KRKs, and maybe I'll do that in a separate video. Yeah, the bass, they were front ported, the bass was kind of enhanced, and from what I'd gone from to the KRKs, it just sounded awesome and inspirational, and I started to make loads of music through them. And I did a remix, a dance remix for Monique DLR. She's a vocalist, she's a songwriter, singer and vocalist from Manchester, and I did a remix for her, and that ended up on Radio 1, again with thanks to Dean Jackson at BBC Introducing and Hugh Stevens again, and that show was called In New Music We Trust.
From the very south of our patch in Market Harborough comes Shotty 4HF. He's a prolific composer, musician and producer, and this is his latest track. With Monique DLR on vocals, this is Saying Alright on BBC Radio 1.
Monique's on the flow again, she got flows, man, wanna get to know again. The Frodo saying ain't nobody got it like this, they be coming out, baby, to buy them a chick. Man, I wanna come on one test, now they wanna...
So that was a track that I produced on the KRKs, and I got used to the KRKs and I got used to this room and how they sounded, and I was at a point where whatever my mix sounded like on them, it sounded like everywhere else. So yeah, it was starting to translate well to other environments, and I just got used to them. And I think that's one thing I'll add at the end is whatever studio monitors you get, you have to get used to them and get used to the room, and you will do that over time. So anyway, the KRK, one of the KRKs, developed an intermittent fault where the woofer would cut out. Now, I have investigated that. I'm not going to talk about that. They were really good speakers, good quality speakers, and I think it was a particular problem with I think they were Generation 2. And then they released Generation 3, and I don't think there was any problems after that. Again, maybe I'll save that for another video. But I love the KRKs. I thought they were brilliant. And by the way, none of these manufacturers are sponsors, or it's not affiliate links or anything like that. It's literally just my own experience through time. So I got the HS7s, just looking around at different monitors. I guess they had that kind of classic look, the white cones. The Yamaha NS10s that you see in every studio, they're popular. And yeah, I guess apart from that and just watching a few videos and looking at different monitors and the price, there wasn't really any other reason for my choice to go for the HS7s, slightly smaller speaker. So the plan was to repair the KRKs and always have these as a secondary pair. I could still use the KRKs, because this woofer wasn't cutting out all the time, and sometimes it wouldn't do it all night, but then obviously when it did do it, I could switch to the HS7s and carry on working. I did investigate the fault in the KRKs, and basically there are some components that I've been having trouble getting hold of, so I was going to fix it myself. I've done a lot of electronics in the past. I did work in electronics for quite a few years, and I'm not an expert in electronics, but I can solder and I know enough to sort of do my own repairs and that kind of thing. So I was going to do that, but I had trouble getting the components, and yeah, then I could buy a whole amp board for the KRK, which at the time was around about 180 quid. And then I thought, if I've got to fix this one, will the fault develop in the other one? I just kind of left it there, and in the end I started to just mix and work on the HS7s for quite some time, to the point that I got the KRKs off the desk and actually was able to move the HS7s further apart and further away from me, which was a great decision. But let me just say, after all that background and life story, sorry about that, but I just wanted you to know that, these weren't my first studio monitors, they weren't the first speakers that I've ever worked with. It's which I think is important, because when I first got these HS7s and I plugged them in and I started to play some music through it, first few songs sounded okay, but then I was listening and I honestly thought they were broken. Yeah, I honestly thought that they were broken. I thought, this can't be right. The truth of it was, I guess, compared to the other speakers and headphones and everything else, and I don't mean anything bad about these speakers, at first, it just didn't sound right. It didn't sound, I'm not going to say it didn't sound very good, because it did, but it was so flat, so kind of level and flat, like there was nothing happening. It certainly didn't sound, you know, enhanced or anything. Yeah, I started to listen to some of my own mixes through these speakers, and I could hear things that I couldn't hear before. Just tiny little noises in the background, scratches, some mid-range noises, and I'm going, what's that? It wasn't even there before. Okay, so something was going on with these speakers when I first set them up. I could definitely hear things that I couldn't hear before, although I wasn't that overly impressed with the sound. So I carried on using them, and I think one of the first tracks that I did create through them, you know, write, create and produce and record through them, had vocals in it. And the one thing I noticed was the vocals were so clear. They came out so well in the finished track. They were crystal clear. They would just balance so well with the rest of the track. And prior to that, vocals was always something that I had to spend a bit more time on. You know, everything else was fine in the mix, but maybe vocals, I'd put them on in the car, that kind of thing, and you go, oh, they're a little bit quiet, or the S's are harsh in here, but they weren't in the room. But with the HS7s, the first vocal mix that I did was like, wow, these things are amazing for vocals. And as I got used to them over time, I realized that this definition, this flat definition, was actually kind of your friend. They obviously weren't broken. It was really a sound that I couldn't get my head around. An overall tone to the music, and again, it is just this a flatness, but with an extreme level of detail, which is kind of like conflicting, if you like. And as I started to work on them and get used to them, you know, if you're thinking about getting these speakers, give it time, because what I will say about the HS7s is, if you can make a mix sound good and interesting and alive on these things, then that is how it will sound. That's what I found anyway. I mean, you know, obviously leave comments, let me know what you think, or if you've used them yourself and anything else that I might be missing. But yeah, I did find that it was harder to get a really good sounding mix. It was taking me longer than it was out the KRKs, but yeah, it was perfect. You could just hear things, and they really told the truth. And especially in the mid-range, so I couldn't have really worked on these without the additional subwoofer, which I tried several different subwoofers over the years, and then settled on one, which has been working for me up until now. And yeah, that's it. Just if you can make a mix sound good on them, chances are they're telling you what you need to know. And yeah, I got to the point where if I made a mix sound good on the HS7s, when I put it in the car or I put it anywhere else, it was sounding good. It was sounding better than what I was getting out of the KRKs. Yeah, by the time I'd spent additional time getting the mix to sound alive and full and clean as well. This was when I got these, and the tweeters go up to, I think it's 30 kilohertz on these tweeters. They can be a little bit tiring, a little bit fatiguing, and the only other thing I will say is the sweet spot is very precise. You can't really move around a lot, and the positioning of these HS7s is going to make a huge difference. You don't want them too close, you don't want them too close together that way either. You've got to make sure they're a good distance away, so that it's producing a full sound by the time it gets to you. You know, I've watched enough videos to understand a little bit about the science behind that, but I'm not going to talk about that now. I'm just going to say, make sure you set these speakers up, position them well. Don't be too close to them. Get them in a really good position. I found that on the sides, they worked better. And with the tweeters on the outside, you got a bigger image. But with the tweeters on the inside, you got slightly more low end. Not that there's a great deal of low end coming out of these speakers, but you did get slightly more. Yeah, that is really all I'm going to say. That I got these speakers. I really wasn't sure about them when I first got them. I wasn't sure what was going on. It did cross my mind that they might even be broken, or I'd done something in setting them up that, you know, was making them not perform normally. But I soon got over that, and as I started to use them more and more, I could tell that, yeah, they were just being very honest and very clear, and it was a level of detail that I wasn't used to. And I will say, for vocal mixes, that kind of thing. Yeah, you can do a lot with these speakers. They are good speakers for the money. Then the size of them were kind of right for this room as well. So yeah, all in all, I was really pleased with them. They are still going strong. No issues with them at all. So I think for the money, they are a good investment, especially if you're in a slightly smaller room, you know, and you just want that to get the detail and to be able to hear what you're doing. I think the Yamaha HS7s are good. Certainly good for that, and I've had a good time using them. I have upgraded just recently, and I've got a pair of Adam Audio, the T-Series speakers, which I will be doing a separate video on those as well. So that's about it for this. Yeah, just a little bit of talking about my history with speakers and how I ended up on the HS7s. And just to give you an idea, I've released an album just recently called Digital Vegan that was totally created and worked on through these speakers, the HS7s, I mean. There's an EP called Obviously Daydreams and a few singles out as well, and they were all created using the HS7s. And if you know, you want to go and check those out, then you can hear the kind of sound that I was getting out of them. And that's it. I'll leave all the links and everything else in the description, and be back with another video very soon. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this one. Give it a like if you did. Don't forget to subscribe, because I'll be doing more videos and all of that stuff. So nice one. Take it easy. Stay creative. Keep smiling. Sound.